Welcome to the Unearned Income Report webinar for the Open Dental program. In today's webinar, we will be taking an in-depth look at unearned income, what it is, how to remedy it, and what reports you can utilize to locate the accounts with unearned income. First, we'll go over what is unearned income. Unearned income comes from patient payments that are entered into Open Dental, and instead of being allocated to specific procedures or providers, they're associated with an unearned type. Typically, this is a prepayment type. Unearned income means the payment hasn't been earned yet, for example, a prepayment or in the event of a patient overpayment. You can allocate unearned income, such as prepayments, to procedures in the account module. We will go over the steps on how to do that toward the end of the video. Prepayments can also be allocated to treatment plan procedures at the time of the payment. This, however, creates hidden splits. I will show you this on some examples. Once the procedures are completed, an income transfer allocates the payment to the procedures. We will go over this briefly. However, if you'd like more information on allocating prepayments to treatment plan procedures, hidden splits, and how to turn this feature on, you can see the links below. Let's go over the Unearned Income Report. We'll start by navigating to our reports, and in Standard. And down in the monthly section, we'll use the Unearned Income option. From this window, we have 4 different reports, and we'll be reviewing each of them. The first one is the Unearned Accounts Report. Go ahead and hit OK here. This report shows us the total amount of unearned income for family balances, each of them listed by the guarantor on the family's account. Utilizing this report, we can see all the family accounts that have a listed amount of unearned that may be able to be allocated at this time. This report does not go into detail on any of the individual prepayments. This report is great for seeing at a glance the unearned totals in our database and which family accounts could possibly use an income transfer. Next, we'll go ahead and take a look at the Unearned Allocation Report. So once again, we'll access our standard reports in the monthly section, the Unearned Income window, and the second tab over is the Unearned Allocation window. Before we jump into this Unearned Allocation Report, I would like to start with a warning here. This report should not be run for users operating on Open Dental with a MySQL 5.5 database. It does have the potential to lock up your database. This report is safe to run, however, for users running Open Dental on MariaDB 10.5. If you would like to utilize this report, please contact Open Dental support first. We can confirm if your database will be safe to run this report or help you upgrade your office to MariaDB if needed. So diving into this report here, we do have some options that I'd like to go over with you. The first option here allows us to see which providers these prepayments or unearned payments were allocated to. Oftentimes, there's not a provider associated with a prepayment. However, there are some cases in which they may be, so it may be useful to have this checked. The next option will exclude any family with a net $0 unearned income balance. This will effectively remove families with no current unearned income from the report. Our first column here will show us all unearned types right now with the checkbox. However, if you'd prefer, you can filter it down to see just basic prepayments or treatment plan prepayments, which may be contributing to hidden splits. Then our second column here allows us to specify if we would like to see only prepayments taken under a specific provider or if we'd like to see all providers. We'll go ahead and hit OK. Looking at this report, it shows us all of the patients in our database that have unearned income on their account. It also shows us any of the completed procedures these payments may be allocated to within that family. Looking at this report from left to right, we can see we have the guarantor of the family listed here, the family balance that still needs to be paid off, the amount of unearned income that we've collected for this family so far, and then the total amount of patient responsibility that we can pay towards. The $2,500 indicates that there is this much money in this person's family account that can be allocated to at this time. The next column over would indicate which provider had been associated with the prepayment if there was one. Then we move on to procedure-related information. The patient that has a procedure that can be allocated toward is listed here from within the family. The specific code, the date that the code was completed, and the fee is also listed with how much remains to be paid towards from the patient. While it's not entirely necessary to print out and have a copy of this report when cleaning up your accounts, this report is useful for detailing the types of splits that we might need to create to balance our accounts. It shows us which procs still need to be allocated to and how much unearned we have already collected that can be allocated. You could use this as a guide to do manual income transfers if needed. The next report that we'll take a look at is the net unearned income. This report will give us a list of patients where unearned income was collected, but there aren't any unallocated procedures on the account, so there's currently nothing to allocate the prepayments to. Similar to the unearned allocation report, from this window, we can go ahead and exclude any patients, or families rather, with a net $0 unearned income balance, effectively removing anyone who doesn't have any unearned in their account. We also have the ability to specify which unearned types we'd like to take a look at if we want to filter down, and which providers, if associated with an unearned payment, we'd like to see payments for. I'll go ahead and just hit OK. From this report, it will list to us the individual family members that have an unearned amount. It will detail how much the unearned is for and notate the entire family balance as well. So this first line item here, the unearned amount that we have on Jim Jones' account is $500. The patient also has a credit on their account of $500. Each of these have an unearned amount that matches their total credit amount. So at this time, it may be best to decide if we truly need to have this money collected for a specific purpose, such as future planned procedures, or if this instead needs to be refunded to our patient due to overpayment or payment for work that we're not actually going to do anymore. This report may be used in conjunction with the Treatment Finder report in the event that you need to find patients with work that needs to be scheduled. The last report that we'll take a look at is the line item unearned income. This report will give us a list of all of the unearned income activity for a specified date range. We'll start by selecting the to and from date range, then run the report. For example, I'll just go ahead and run it for this month of September. Again, we have the ability to show the provider column in the event that you are taking prepayments with providers associated with them. Go ahead and hit OK. What we see here on this report is every instance of a transaction involving unearned income. Over on the right-hand side in the amount column, this is the amount of unearned that we've taken in at that specific date listed on the left. In the middle, you can see which patient it's associated with and what type we took in at that time, whether it was a prepayment, treatment plan prepayment, or something other that you've customized. On this report, there may be negative amounts in the unearned column. This would indicate that you had refunded out a patient a specific amount, but that refund had not been allocated to a specific procedure. It could also indicate that there is a split on a particular income transfer that is also not allocated to something. This report is not necessarily one that you'd work off of or refer to for cleaning up accounts or accounting purposes. However, it could be useful in the event that you need to see line-by-line representation of transactions relating to unearned income. Now that we've looked at all of the different unearned income reports, let's go ahead and take a look at some examples of accounts with unearned and talk about how we can begin allocating these prepayments to procedures that exist. Now that we've reviewed the various unearned income reports, let's go ahead and take a look at some accounts in which we may need to allocate that unearned income. I'll go ahead and close out of our reports window, and I'll pull up a first example. Our first example here, in their account, they paid in advance for work that was going to be done. What we can do at this point is we can now allocate it if we know specifically which procedures we're paying towards. I'm going to go to the payment dropdown and select the Allocate Unearned button. I now have a list of entries that could be allocated towards with that $100 payment. I'll go ahead and select enough to cover that $100 prepayment. So we'll select just this one, and hit OK. Since the amount that we have to allocate towards is only $100 and each of those procedures costs $90, you can see down below just exactly how it did the math to allocate what we already have to procedures. We have our first prepayment split, taking $90 worth of our $100 prepayment and associating it with the exam. The remaining $10 is split off to the pro fee. Once we've reviewed our splits, we can go ahead and hit OK. An income transfer line item now appears on the ledger that, when we highlight it, shows exactly what it's allocating to. Each of the procedures now show how much has been paid towards by the patient on the individual line item. On the exam, you can see that the patient portion was $90 and that the patient has now paid towards it $90, completely and effectively paying that procedure off. The pro fee, the patient portion is again $90, but with that $100 prepayment, we were only able to allocate $10 towards it, which shows in that patient paying line item. The patient would still need to pay towards this particular procedure another $80. At this time, due to the other procedures in the account, the patient does still owe us $155, which is their true and correct balance, but the unearned total at the top has been reduced to nothing. Let's take a look at another example. I'll go ahead and select my other patient here. On this patient's account, we can see that they have an unearned amount of $300 at the top. The prepayment comes from earlier in this month. At this time, the patient does have a balance. In fact, both the patient here and their family member also have a balance, with a large balance for $375 overall for the entire family. The $300 prepayment was paid and placed on David's account here. However, after speaking with the patient, they had intended for that payment to go to Jennifer's account, with the remainder allowing to go to David's as well. Since this one is a lot more specific with how we want to allocate our particular payment, we can go ahead and begin by doing a manual income transfer. A manual income transfer is a good choice when you're working with multiple patients from the same family and when you know specifically where you want your funds to be allocated to. The Allocate Unearned tool will only allocate prepayments to charges on that same exact account, so it won't allocate across family members. For a manual income transfer, we'll start by doing a payment here of $0. We're not taking in any money at this time, we're just moving funds that already exist, which is why we enter 0. From this window, in the middle, we'll go ahead and check that this is not a specific payment type other than an income transfer. Now that we have that checked, we can go ahead and begin by specifying where we want our funds to go. To do so, we'll go ahead and add splits down in the lower left-hand side. Since the prepayment was posted on David's account, we'll go ahead and make sure that David is the first patient highlighted here. And we'll start with our split. The split is going to be a negative 300 because we're taking 300 worth of unearned away from this particular account and posting it somewhere else. I'll change my unearned type to prepayment, matching how I originally took in that check. And I'll remove the provider as there wasn't one on my prepayment. I'll go ahead and hit OK. So now at this time, I have a credit down here, which is listed at the bottom, of $300 that I need to apply to other procedures. I'll go ahead and add another split. I'm going to go ahead and highlight Jen's name here. And then in the middle, where it says procedure, I can go ahead and select the attach button to search for procedures that I want to allocate to. Here are the procs that show up. I'll go ahead and highlight them one by one. This first proc we need to pay $90 towards. So after I have it highlighted, I hit OK and enter in the amount, how much I'm allocating towards it, which is the full 90. I'll do this several times over until all of Jen's particular procedures are paid off. So again, add split, specify that the patient is Jen, specify which procedure by selecting the attach button, highlighting the procedure and hitting OK, and then entering how much we're applying towards that procedure, which in this case, it's the full amount. It's only 2 procs left here on Jen's account, and there will still be a remainder afterwards that we can allocate to David's account. So again, I have my procedure attached. I'll enter how much I'm allocating towards and hit OK. And then one more split for Jen here. Highlight her name, attach the procedure, enter the amount. All of these splits here currently add up to a total of negative 25. We'll know that our work is complete when this balances out to 0. So we'll need one more split at least to allocate that negative 25. And since Jennifer's procs are all paid towards, we can allocate some to David. Hitting the add split button, David is my selected patient. I'll go ahead and attach our procedure and hit OK. Since we only have $25 left to allocate to any of our procs, we'll enter in just 25 in the amount. But you can see over here on our calculator that there will still be a $375 balance remaining on this specific proc. I'll go ahead and hit OK. With all of my splits lined up the way I want them, I can go ahead and hit OK. Our unearned at the top has been reduced to 0, and you can see our income transfer when highlighted shows that it's associated some money to this particular procedure here. And also, when we switch to Jen's account, her procs are paid towards as well. So if you highlight the entire family, here's what our transfer allocated towards. That current estimated balance of $375 belongs to David with this particular filling on tooth 4. So that wraps that up nicely. Everything is allocated exactly the way the patient had specified they wanted it to, and the unearned has been removed. For our last example, we'll go ahead and navigate to one more patient here. On this account here, we did have a $500 check for a prepayment that came in on the 21st and work that was completed on the 28th. If I had a specific procedure that I wanted to allocate to, I could use the drop down and select the allocate unearned button, pick which procedure I want to see, and then hit OK. Alternatively, as another option, you can use the income transfer tool as well, accessed by the same drop down. What this will do is it will use its logic to allocate the funds for me. It will take that payment and allocate it to the oldest outstanding unpaid procedure on the account. All I have to do is click the transfer button and then close. Now we can see that transfer line item down at the bottom. When highlighted, it shows that it's allocated to that first proc here in the top, the crown on tooth 14. Our unearned at the top again has been reduced, and the balance on the account remains the same. The patient still owes $2,000, but they're paying towards these individual procedures now at this time.
Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. If you have additional questions, please call our support line at 503-363-5432 or access our complete online manual at opendental.com. And to make sure you're staying up to date on our latest training videos, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications.